Good afternoon and welcome to our third sector focused webinar series for window and door members. My name's Gary Smith and I'll be running you through today. Next please, Nayan. So the proceedings for today during the webinar, today's webinar will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube. Everyone that's joined us is actually on mute. So we have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So if you'd like to speak at this time, please use the raise hand function on your toolbar as shown there. And that will unmute you and enable you to ask some questions. So we do encourage you to do so. You might have questions during the presentations, and we'll answer a couple of questions after every short presentation. If you have those questions, can you please type those into the Q&A once again on your toolbar, as you can see on the bottom of the toolbar there. Now you can either send those questions to everyone that's on the webinar, or you can actually just send it privately to the panel, and we'll endeavour to answer each of those as we go along and at the end of the session. Next, please. So the content for the webinar today, we'll have a word from our sponsor. So we'd like to thank Softtech very much for sponsoring the webinar for Windows and Doors members today. We'll hear from Scott shortly. We then have Nayan Das, so we've got some presentations from our technical team. So Nayan Das, who will talk to us about some standards and regulations updates and installation. Russell Harris will talk to us about the National Construction Code. Suman Chetri will talk to us about WERS and energy. Poya Abtahi will talk to us about product technical statements, technical support. Then we'll move away from our technical team, and Melissa Baker, our training and health and safety manager, will join us for a very brief update on training. And then we'll be joined by our executive director and CEO, Clinton Skeoch, who will talk about the accredited company program and what's next for the AGWA. Next slide. So firstly, we'd like to welcome our webinar partner, Softtech, and we have Scott Hannay with us today, the Business Development Manager for Softtech. Scott, if you'd like to turn on your microphone and put your picture up, that'd be terrific. We're really pleased that Softtech are a great supporter of the association and have been for many years, and it's fantastic that they've come along to support this webinar. So I might hand over you, Scott, to have a few words, and just for each slide, just say next.
Fantastic.
Next.
Thanks very much, Gary. And you can hear me now? Yep.
Yes, mate. Go ahead and
Okay.
Nayan, next slide, please.
Right. So thanks, Gary, and thanks to the organisation for setting up these industry webinars. It's really important, I think, the way you're supporting the industry. So we're very happy to be part of the whole program, and I think it'll probably become a little bit more common, not only with the organisation, but with others. Look, I suppose I'll just give you a bit of an overview, just a quick overview and a thank you from Softtech. But the name Softtech and the platform V6 may be reasonably well known in the industry. Some may not know us, some do. But what may not be known, well known, is that we are a very global organisation and have been for very many years. So, you know, as far away as Fort Lauderdale in the US, we have a very big market in the North American market, in the UK and France. India, we have a production office, but it's in the Asia Pacific region, Australia and New Zealand, that we have, and this is important, you know, half of our staff are here because headquarters is still Auckland for development, and our support team is centred in Sydney. So what does that mean to, I mean, I suppose, you know, what does that mean to us? So what you've got is, you've got firepower here. You've got a lot of staff. Myself, business development manager, I'm just for the region, but you've got Brett Perez, who looks after the strategic accounts in the region, relationship manager Nick Boyd, Stuart, who's our product manager globally, Slavik Hajduk is, and Derek are in the support team with implementation and high-level product issues. And then there's more people that obviously I couldn't get photos of, to be honest. I don't know whether we needed more photos of us, but I thought just give you a bit of an idea, a bit of a face to it, because it can sometimes be a little bit, a bit of a mystery. Next. So what do we do? Very briefly, our software platform, V6, is critical in businesses in the window, door and facade industry to design, estimate and manufacture shop fronts, curtain walls, window walls, residential, even louvers, screens, skylights, sun control systems, anything to do with the external windows and doors, in that vein anyway. So certainly in any sort of material as well, timber, aluminium, UPVC, you name it. So just clarify that. Next. Speed and accuracy is what we're known for, quality information. So I'll keep in with the speed there. So next. So what you get is what you see with V6. Unlike other platforms, there's not many in the world that sort of come close to us, but they don't have a parametric model the way we do. So you can really look at what you're building in real time, and that can be any sort of thing. So things like shop drawings and scheduling and CNC machining and this sort of technology needs to have something you can depend on, and what you see is what you get with V6. So some of the things that we've developed more recently, our better shop drawing module and easy updates. And obviously next, we can deliver all of this on the cloud now. So it's not just on your desktop or it's not on your server. We can deliver a cloud service as we're Microsoft Gold partners, and we're delivering V6 to you in the Azure platform, which is backed by Microsoft. So look, thanks for the opportunity, Gary, just to get a couple of words in. I left a little bit of interest here for some of the glass files in the region with the 6mm clear reader behind me, just for a bit of edge. But enjoy the webinar, and I'm sure we'll learn a great deal. Thank you very much, Gary.
Thanks, Scott. And once again, thanks to Softtech. We really, really appreciate your support. So I'd now like to welcome Nayan Das, part of our technical team, who will take you through standards and regulations and installation. Fire away, Nayan.
Thank you, Gary. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Nayan Das, and I'm going to go through some of the standards and regulation update. Well, we all know that the National Construction Code of Australia gets revised in a 3-year cycle to reflect the advances in technology as well as the current best practices of the industry. It was last revised in 2019. In line with the frequent revision of NCC, standards are also reviewed and revised from time to time. The AGWA technical team, including Russell, Hoya, Suman, and myself, actively engages with the Australian Building Codes Board and Standard Australia to develop relevant content for different standards that are appropriate for our industry. Today, I'm here to talk about 2 very important topics in which substantial changes have been made or are impending. One of the standards that I'm going to talk about is AS 3959, which is construction of buildings in bushfire-prone areas. I'll follow that up with some of the upcoming changes in the wind standards, which are AS NZS 1170 Part 2 and AS 4055, which is wind loads for housing. An important point to note here is that all these 3 standards are primary references in the NCC, and hence are mandatory requirements when it comes to deemed to satisfied compliance. AS 3959 provides outlines or requirements for building elements in bushfire-prone areas to improve the ability of the building to better withstand attack from bushfire. It was last revised in 2018 November. One of the changes that we witnessed in the last revision, which was in 2018 November, is the clarification of gap criteria. AGWA previously raised question to the standard's intention of having a maximum aperture for screen of about 2 millimeter, while the gap around openings could be 3 millimeter. Subsequently, the gaps around openings were limited to 2 millimeter or has to be protected by a sill or a screen. Another provision that had changed after the 2018 revision is the requirement for externally fitted hardware. Externally fitted hardware in higher bell ratings, such as bell 29 and above, now will need to be metal or shielded by metal. In response to all the changes that have come through in 2018 revision, AGWA have produced an updated bushfire guide, which can be downloaded from our website for free. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our AGWA technical committee members who have contributed significantly to help us produce this particular guide. In addition to the revision of 2018, the standard has also gone through two subsequent amendments. Amendment 1 in 2019 and second amendment has just completed its public consultation phase in July this year. Both of these amendments were mostly editorial in nature and had little to no impact to our industry. This particular topic of wind standard will be seeing a lot of changes in the coming year or so. Earlier this year, in April, AS NZS 1170 Part 2 was released. The draft of AS 1170 Part 2 was released for public comment. Since AS 4055 depends on the provision of 1170 Part 2, AGWA contributed and collaborated with Standards Australia to develop and revise AS 4055. Please note the commenting period for AS 4055 is still open, and if any of our members want to raise any concern about the draft version of AS 4055, please feel free to reach to our technical team or myself, and we'll be happy to put forward your comments. Now, coming back to the revision of these particular standards, the main motivation to revise these standards was to improve our current understanding of severe wind events and the ongoing effects of climate change. I'll be going through some of the changes that would likely be coming up in the next year or so with 1170 Part 2. And I hope that will also cover the changes in 4055, because at the end, the provisions of 4055 depends on 1170 Part 2. One of the changes that you will see is the Australian map will be redrawn. Why it's being required to redrawn is because of the fact that there will be some new addition of sub-regions within various other regions, such as there will be new addition of region B1 and B2 within region B. Another change that we'll see is the introduction of a new factor, which is climate multiplier in the equation of site wind speed. The draft version have pointed out that the value of climate multiplier is 1.05. One of the most notable changes with this draft will be the removal of terrain category 1.5. We all know that terrain category 1.5 is used for unenclosed water bodies and open water surfaces. With the upcoming changes, all water surfaces will fall under terrain category 1. In AS 4055, we use table 2.2 for wind site classification. This particular table has been revised to incorporate all the changes that came through 1170 Part 2. Now, all these changes are either in draft stage or in public comment phase. I could go on with more details of all these changes, but I would like to move on to the next topic and stop this part of the presentation. If our members want to have more information about the changes, feel free to reach out to our team or myself, and we'll be happy to forward you some of the more information regarding these changes. So that's all from me on standards and regulation, and I'll move on to the next topic, which is installation. When it comes to installation, flashing plays a very important role. One of the notable addition in 2019 NCC revision was the new provision of weatherproofing of openings, especially flashing around windows and doors. Now there is a mandatory requirement for head and sill flashing. For masonry veneer, the flashing should extend up to a minimum of 150 millimeter on either side of the opening, while for timber and composite wall cladding, the extension of flashing should be minimum 110 millimeter on either side of the opening. AGWA have produced a technical fact sheet on the flashing provision based on the requirement of NCC 2019. Please feel free to go to our website and download this particular technical fact sheet on window flashing. Another important aspect when it comes to installation is the appropriate sequence of installation and number of fixing. AGWA have updated the residential installation guide so that our members can use it for basic handling and installation instruction for windows and doors. AGWA have also collaborated with key industry stakeholders such as HIA and AGWA technical committees to review and update the fixing guide. Currently, the draft of fixing guide is complete and is under review for final publication. The fixing guide now incorporates the latest pressure values from AS2047. It has also been made user-friendly and easier to read. I would encourage our members to go to our website and get all of these resources. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation and thank you all for your kind attention. Over to you, Gary.
Thank you, Nayan. We just have a couple of questions here for you. There's one: if the proposed wind load standards changes take place, what does that actually mean for windows?
Okay, that's a very good question to have at the end of the presentation. Basically, what these changes mean is that we have to reassess our wind rating, our wind site classification. For example, currently the site that will treat as a terrain category 1.5 will in future or with the upcoming changes will become terrain category 1. That might mean that there will be an impact with the wind rating. Earlier, because of terrain category 1.5, the wind rating could be N2, and because of the changes, there could be an increase in the wind rating, which could be N3. So we need to reevaluate and reassess the wind rating because of these changes. Again, not necessarily all the site rating will increase because of these changes. As it is evident from the draft that the wind speed, that there is a reduction in wind speed in certain regions, such as region D, which falls under cyclonic region. So as due to reduction in wind speed in certain region, there is also evidence of reduction of wind rating. In summary, the only intention of presenting these very changes is to provide our members an opportunity to stay ahead of the curve and also to inform about all the upcoming changes.
So we've just got another one in here, Nayan, which is probably appropriate because of what you've just been talking about. It just says, is there a clarification in the upcoming changes regarding who is supposed to provide the actual wind rating? Which is the age-old question and issue that our members have always had.
Yes, Gary, that's a very good question, I must say. I definitely understand how important it is to clarify who is responsible for which part of the job, especially when it comes to wind rating. However, the National Construction Code is a performance-based document, and it provides the minimum requirements for building elements without giving any guidance on who's who. And since our standards most of the standards that I spoke about are primary references to the NCC. And the drafting protocol of NCC does not allocate or does not allow to allocate responsibilities. So in summary, there is no clear guidance who is responsible for which part of the job. However, there is a general consensus at a committee level that when it comes to win rating, builders should provide appropriate win rating or site win classification to the manufacturer or window supplier. I hope that answers the question.
Yep. One more here from Todd West. Why is the region B1, B2 changing? You might not have the answer, Nayan, and you might want to take it offline, but if you've got an answer to that, fire away.
The very reason for having the step change within the region is because of the effect of the wind, how actually the wind behaves. So if you're coming from a coastal region, you will have a strong wind near to the coast, and then you will have a incrementally, like it's not incrementally in a way, it will decrease in a step fashion. So within one region, you have a different wind pressure. So that's a region of demarcating two different regions. And there are some other scientific analysis that happen behind the scene to justify the breaking up of two regions so as to balance the cost benefit analysis and also to give importance to the effects of climate change that we are witnessing at this moment. But yes, I'm happy to take that offline and also provide some more information on that particular aspect.
Thank you, Nayan. So I did actually put Nayan's email address in the chat, so you can certainly call Nayan or shoot him an email. So we might now, Nayan, introduce Russell, who's our next speaker. So Russell, if you'd like to jump on and take us through your presentation on the National Construction Code.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gary. Welcome, everybody. Thanks, Nayan. That was a great presentation, mate. Good job. My job here today is to talk about the National Construction Code, particularly NCC 2022. We know that, as Nayan suggested, the NCC is on a 3-year cycle. The last publication was in 2019. The next one is due in 2022. So that doesn't mean we're sitting on our hands doing nothing in the meantime. We're actually working very, very hard to prepare for NCC 2022 and to make sure our members' interests and concerns are raised. Nayan, can you go to the next one, please? So I'm going to talk about 3 main elements or core areas of focus that are being discussed in the NCC for 2022. The first one is around acceptable construction practices, and most notably part 3.6, which is glazing. Last year in 2019, when we had the last publication, the focus was on window flashing, and Nayan spoke about those changes that have come through. That was all based on the Readability Initiative, which is a program implemented by the ABCB to improve the content of the NCC so that it's easier to read, but also more granular in its content. So it contains more information, effectively instructions. You know, the idea being that a builder should be able to pick up the NCC and there's a set of rules he can use to build a building. So while it's a performance-based code, the movement, particularly in volume 2, is to provide more prescriptive detail on how to do that. So as that relates to NCC 2022, that program's extended and continued, and the next focus that we didn't actually, we started this last time, but we didn't quite get it finished, is now moving on to the glazing part 3.6, particularly around installation, and fundamentally the intent behind this is to overcome some conflicts or some differences between what the NCC said previously and what the reference standards AS 1288 and 2047 said. There were some fairly substantial conflicts in amongst there. So we've gone through both documents and we've realigned them, so adjusted the NCC to reflect the same content as in 1288 so that we don't have those situations. They didn't come up very often, but they did come up and it was annoying. So it's good to have those on the way to being fixed. We've also substantially increased the content to provide more detail on the installation practices, so packing, gaps, sealing, all of those attributes will be covered in the new provisions, as well as, if you go to the next slide, Nain, the fixing details. And this is probably where most of the new content comes in. And I'm very proud and pleased to say that that content is actually coming from AGWA. All of the tables, I haven't shown them here, but the tables and the guidance on how to install a window and how to fix the number of fixings required, the locations of fixings and packers and things like that is more or less directly out of our content. It's content we've provided to the NCC. So another example of industry being able to provide information and contribute to the National Construction Code. So that's a big win for us to be represented in that way. And if you'd like to go to the next one, please. The second area I'd like to flag, I suppose, for your benefit would be the discussion around accessible housing. There's been a long-standing discussion. This is a 10-year-old conversation around adding in accessibility requirements into the NCC. And its most recent iteration is based heavily on the NDIS outcomes and key learnings from that process. And the fundamental thinking is that we've got an aging population, and ultimately every one of us is going to age and possibly need, be compromised in our mobility or our eyesight. We might need a wheelchair at some point. And the idea being that rather than having, if that happens, or if we have an injury, for example, rather than having to move house, the houses that we construct now should be capable of allowing us to live in our home environment without having to move. So things like door widths and bathrooms and wet areas are a key area of consideration. And most notably for us, door sills and handles and handle heights and things like that. Now, where we're at to in the process is we started off with the proposed changes, that blue document on the left, and the technical committees provided some commentary to that. That all then fed into the consultation RIS, or the regulatory impact statement, which is that white document there, developed by an independent consultant. And ultimately, both of those documents talk about 6 options. Well, 7 options actually. The first option being maintain the status quo, do nothing, and then the other end of the spectrum, option 6, was basically change everything and everything in between. What the RIS highlighted was that there's not a great return on investment or a payback. The NCC is very much focused on cost-benefit ratios, and options 2 to 6 really didn't provide a positive net benefit to society. So we're really, what it looks like is we're down to option 1 or no change at all. I can't really comment any further on that because those decisions haven't been made yet, but based on what we read into the RIS and the feedback that we're getting from the ABCB, is it's likely to be little to no change. What is possible, or what is likely, is door opening widths to the front door. For example, you might find houses from NCC 2022 onwards will have a minimum 950 front door. Most do now anyway, but that's a change that's likely to come into the NCC. Another one is the transition from the driveway or the footpath to the house would need to be 0 step or 1 step. So you need to be able to provide, an accessible transition to the front door, and also provide a downstairs sanitary compartment, so a downstairs toilet or shower and things like that. And there's also some additional requirements around hand railing and that sort of thing, or the provision to add hand railing into wet areas. So all of that doesn't really affect us too much, but obviously we keep an eye on it just to make sure there's nothing going to come, no surprises that come in to bite us at the tail end. So more on that later, but I just wanted to flag it for the benefit of this presentation. Can we go to the next one, please, Nain? And the last area that I want to talk about in more detail is the energy space, because that's certainly where we're going to see the most amount of change. And to introduce that, I thought it relevant to go back to where we started in the COAG trajectory document, which outlines the step changes that will occur over the next decade out to 2030. And it's slated there, you can see all the years there, and it's divided into commercial and residential. And basically, in summary, where we're at is in 2019, we saw a substantial increase in stringency for energy efficiency in commercial buildings in Section J. And in 2022, we're going to see the residential sector move in that same direction. So there's going to be a fairly substantial change to the residential energy requirements. Next, please. In terms of what we're doing as an association to represent industry's needs, we've been absent from the conversation for some time. We've always had we've always provided commentary and contributed to the discussion, but we've never had a seat at the table before like we do now. In January, we actually, a contingent from the association, we drove to Canberra and we met with the powers that be, the senior management of the ABCB, and negotiated a seat on both the residential technical working group and the commercial technical working group for energy efficiency. So that gives us a voice. It gives us a seat at the table. It gives us early access to what's being discussed, and it gives us an opportunity to provide feedback and contribute to that conversation. So that's a big win for us. And I'll talk about what that means coming up. Next, please, Nan. In terms of the process and where we're at, we're a little bit better than halfway through the drafting process, which means we don't have a lot to show in terms of real world output. We don't have a finished draft, of course. It's still under negotiation and debate. But that will be concluded later this year in the next couple of months. And then we'll move into a consultation RIS, which is basically a consultant will be engaged to evaluate the cost benefit analysis of what's been proposed. We'll then move into public consultation through the first quarter of next year. There'll be a final RIS to justify and validate all the outcomes are cost positive or benefit positive. And then, of course, the approval process and publication in 2022. Next, please, Nan. So what does all this mean for us? It really boils down to a couple of key areas, and I'll go through those in detail. If anyone has been watching this space, you'll recall the scoping study that was done very early last year. And there were two options put forward to the BCC, and that was to target zero regulated energy or near zero. And the decision that's been handed down by the board is that we're actually going to do both. In Class 1 buildings, we will be targeting zero regulated energy, but in Class 2, a slightly lower threshold in near zero. And that's fundamentally related to the ability to provide on-site power generation to larger buildings. So what does that mean? Fundamentally, it's as simple as we're targeting 7 stars in NatHERS. There's a little bit of work going on. 7 stars now is not quite what 7 stars will be next year, but it's close. There's a lot of work going on with playing with more modern and more up-to-date climate data. There's a rebanding process going on, but fundamentally, we're targeting 7 stars. It's not too much different to what we're doing in 7 stars now, and there are plenty of 7-star houses out there, so it's very much achievable. What will change or what will be introduced as a new provision in the NCC is the ability to, or the requirement to model the whole of house. So that's not just how the building uses energy, but where that energy comes from. So that's fundamental. We're talking about solar panels and things like that. Now, what we're going to see is that, particularly in larger houses, it will be mandated and required that there's an on-site generation capacity. One of the big risk factors or concerns that was flagged to us, and we flagged with government early on in that process, was the risk or the possibility that those on-site power generation could be used to offset thermal comfort or building fabric. There's been a lot of discussion on that and a lot of back and forth, and we've advocated very strongly to not allow that to happen. And in fact, the latest report that's been handed down, which pretty much sums up where we're going to land, confirms that there will not be any offset. You won't be able to substitute double glazed windows for solar panels, for example. You will be able to use solar panels to get points, I suppose, the best way to describe it, to allow for less efficient hot water services or other building services. So you can add if you've got a pool pump and that's expensive to run, it might cause the building to not meet the energy requirements, regulated zero energy. So you can offset that with some solar panels, but you won't be able to substitute glazing, for example, or even wall insulation for solar panels. So all of this is still up in the air. We haven't actually seen anything real concrete yet. We've seen a lot of reports, a lot of discussion. We certainly have a good idea of where we think it's going, but we won't get any real indication until after the next BCC meeting, which is only a couple of weeks away. So over the last part of this year, I expect we'll be circulating a lot more information about where the NCC is at and what we're likely to see in 2022. Nan, please, next. In the commercial area, as I said before, there's no real intent to increase the stringency of energy in commercial buildings, but that's not to say there isn't any work going on. Fundamentally, everything that is going on in the commercial space is about future-proofing buildings. So it's about introducing new provisions to provide for the future needs of the building. So buildings we build now have the infrastructure and the technology to provide things like, improved on-site generation and of course electric vehicle charging points and things like that. So that's fundamentally where all that sort of conversations is at. I don't expect we'll see any real changes to Section J that affect us. Next please, Nan. I think that's it. Yeah, are there any questions?
There's a couple here, Russell. So with the accessibility proposed changes in option 1 that you mentioned as being the most likely to be included if anything's changed at all, what does that actually mean to windows and doors? You mentioned front entries needed to be wider. Is there anything else that we should be thinking about?
I think no, not in option 1. In option 2, the thresholds and things like that start to come in. I think there's going to be some question marks on how we meet the air infiltration or the air exchange rates when with zero transition sills. Also waterproofing, but these aren't issues that we don't contend with now. So I don't think there's going to be a great deal. It's primarily going to be on door opening widths. I guess would be the most significant factor that will affect us.
There's one more here. So what is the likely impact on windows when 7-star housing is implemented? And will the AGWA run simulations on the impact to windows prior to the implementation?
Yeah, that's a short question with a long answer. Look, we have done some modelling, some preliminary studies, and we will continue to, I guess, model and investigate impacts. That's what we're here to do. We don't know exactly what we're dealing with because the final, as I said, the BCC's meeting, the provisions they're not changing radically, but they are changing fairly frequently as we play the game of tennis and bat the ball back and forth. So it's a bit hard we don't want to invest in a big study now before we know what we're dealing with, but certainly when we get to a final draft stage, we'll be investing in some studies to understand what that means for windows. Just based on what we do know, 7-star, there are plenty of 7-star houses out there now. And the goalpost isn't changing that much. It's just that 7-star becomes the minimum as opposed to a value-added proposition. So what we see in 7-stars now in terms of glazing, double glaze, high performance, low ease, thermally broken frames, all these things are going to become more normal and more common.
That's all we've got for you, Russell. So thank you very much.
We'd
next like to introduce Suman, our Sustainability Manager. Suman's going to talk to us about WERS and energy. Thanks, Suman.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this part of the webinar. My name is Suman Chetri, and I'll be presenting the next section of this webinar on energy-related topics. We'll also be providing a few updates on a few things that AGWA have been doing behind the scene in order to provide a robust outcome for the industry. The first topic that I'll be covering would be facade calculator, which is even more relevant now with the new provisions of Section J in NCC 2019. This facade calculator that we are currently using replaces the existing glazing calculator that we have used for so long. So now it's time to get used to it. The most significant change that you might have already seen or have been aware is that according to the new provisions, the total facade requirement has to be calculated. That means the requirement is calculated on glazing and wire requirements combined together. And the facade calculator just does that for you. It does the calculation for both glazing and wall and gives you a final value. It also takes into consideration of what state, what class of building, what climatic zone, and gives you a final number to meet. So the final value that has to be met is calculated in two ways, method 1 and method 2, and the facade calculator checks compliance on both method 1 and method 2. Now, if you are not sure about what method 1 and method 2 is, method 1 actually means that you are calculating your requirements for each aspect of the building. So you are calculating separate requirement for north, separate for south, east, west, and you have to meet all those separately. But by method 2, you are calculating the value requirement for the whole house rather than individual aspect, and that has to be met. You can meet either method 1 or method 2. That means if your final requirement are compliant by either method, then that's a good project. You're good to go, and the facade calculator does that for you. The other thing that facade calculator can do is it can optimize your window selection in terms of what values, what kind of windows that you're inputting, your shading devices, your shading requirements, your insulation, your thermal bracing. What if a certain window product or a certain shading devices does not meet the required criteria, then you can go back into that particular section and change those requirements so that you are inputting a valid, a compliant product that will give you a compliant result. It will also generate a summary. So the summary will include everything that is included in that particular project. And then it will set a reference building for JV3. Now this calculator is a Excel-based calculator. So there's no install required, and it can be downloaded from the ABCB website. Now, one of the other key points that I want to talk in this webinar is about the requirement of subframing. Now, according to the new Section J provision of 2019, subframing has become mandatory. So what does that mean for windows? That means that any window and door product need to account for the thermal breathing with the inclusion of subframes such as subseal or subhead. Hence, the thermal performance values has to be calculated with all these elements into it. If a product, like a window product, door product, has been calculated without the inclusion of subseal or subhead, then you cannot use those values to prove compliance for Section J 2019. Link has been provided, I think, by Gary to download and have a look at the facade calculator if you're interested. And just another key point is this provision has been delayed in Western Australia for another 12 months. So it is not in effect in Western Australia. So the Western Australian manufacturers still can use the old provisions. Next slide, please. So that's the general front end of the facade calculator, and that's where you can find your link to download it. Next slide, please. So moving to the next topic. Recently, AGWA invested in preparing an energy efficiency white paper in order to understand the current issues within the industry and to plan for the future of our industry. Quite a few recommendations came out of the white paper. By the way, if you have not already looked at the white paper and would like a copy of white paper, feel free to contact us by phone or email, and we shall provide you a copy of it. Some of the white paper recommendations that came about were around worse automation and upgrade, need of a standardized methodology for calculation for thermal performance and ability to do at-size rating to represent product as built. This white paper highlighted the issues that we currently have in the industry and actually provided AGWA with a framework to build their strategy, like a future strategy, so that we can plan ahead. As we know, AGWA is always committed to plan for the future of the industry. Since such recommendation came out from the white paper, AGWA team have been very proactively working behind the scene. Next slide, please. So it's the recommendations that came out from the white paper. We are actually on our way to delivering some of those recommendations and promises that came about. And one of the key work that AGWA have been currently involved is in the development of a Australian standard for a methodology to do the thermal performance calculation. That will take into consideration of Australian climate, Australian environmental condition, and it will give a robust outcome. Now, this development of Australian standard project has already been started. AGWA have already been involved in several meetings with the Standards Australia, which is looking to aligning the existing ISO 15099 into a new Australian standard through a standard committee BD 110, which now has been expanded to include AGWA's recent proposal. An internal working committee has been actively involved in formulating and aligning the ISO 15099 into this new standard so that the investment made by our members in thousands of ratings in the last 20 years are still valid. Now, you might be wondering why we need to do this. We already have so many methodologies, but why do we need this? This is quite crucial because currently there is no standard way of calculation of thermal performance in Australia. There are various practices, which includes the AFRC protocol, which is based on the ISO 15099, and there are a few other standards such as EN 673, which is the European standard. Hence, there is no uniformity in calculation. Same product, like your same awning window can have two different results based on the different methodology, and both can be right, because there's no any prescribed methodology to do the calculation. So often we see that Australian products are disadvantaged when compared to similar products rated elsewhere and imported, is they might have a slightly better value by the virtue of different calculation methodology. And this is something that needs to be looked into because we need a fair competition in the market. And this is also to provide a level playing field. We do not want to have our members disadvantaged just by having this kind of ununiform calculation method in the field. So one of the other crucial area of work with this one is we not only want to have a standardized methodology, we want to have it referenced in the NCC because NCC is the framework. It provides the guideline. So having a prescribed methodology in the NCC provides that benchmark through the in the construction code, and we can challenge any wrongdoings when it comes to calculating thermal performance. We have that benchmark stated in the NCC. So that is one of our the intention to work with the Standards Australia to get this standard there. So we hope to get there sooner rather than later. Now that ends my part of the presentation today, and thank you for your patience. And if you have any questions, then it's the time to raise it. Over to you, Gary.
Yeah, hi Sumit. We do have a couple of questions. So one from James. So with regard to entering values in the facade calculator,
Yep.
At this stage, is the WERS website the only place to get verified values? And the next part of the question, is third-party software currently allowed under the NCC?
The question to the first part, the answer to the first part of the question, Gary, is WERS is one of the place where you can get your accurate values. The WERS values are based on AFRC protocol. Now, NCC does not dictate that your values has to come from AFRC protocol or from ISO 15099. It says that your values has to be calculated from a standard methodology, which is a part of a intrinsic standard. Now, that allows any other standard methodology and the value that come out from those to be entered into the facade calculator. So in short, WERS is one of the options, but not the only option.
We have another one here. Oh, yeah, well, you've really covered both of those parts of the question. So another one here, why are we not looking at EN ratings as well, which seem to compete against more than ISO? One
of the reasons that we are not looking to EN is we we are looking into aligning and providing a methodology that is more suitable to the Australian environment and climate condition. There are certain issues and the conditions that is not relevant in the EN 673 that can be adopted in the Australian condition. And also, one of the other thing is ISO 15099 is the backbone of AFRC, which in turn refers to NFRC. And the industry, the Australian industry, have been following ISO 15099 for the last 20 years. So we do not want to jeopardize our 20 years worth of investment in the industry as well. So we want to keep our investment valid and at the same time provide a robust solution to the industry.
Can I add to that, Nain? Suman?
Yeah.
It's really important to clarify what the difference between ISO and EN standards are. The European standards are modeled under different climate conditions, less severe climate conditions. So, if you think about where Europe sits on the map of Australia, it's somewhere in the Great Australian Bight. It's predominantly a heating climate, whereas Australia is primarily a cooling climate. So very different environmental conditions. And what we see when you compare exactly the same window under ISO conditions or Australian conditions modeled against the European conditions, on paper, the European condition values give that window a bit of an advantage. So the European methodology gives lower numbers or better numbers than the Australian version. And that's because one of the reasons is because of those climate differences. So fundamentally, the methodology itself needs to be uniform so that we're getting fair results. We're not skewing the market or providing an unfair advantage simply because windows that are imported or modeled under European conditions get that on paper advantage. So we really need to lock that down and get that sorted out so that we have one solution that's right for Australia. And we need to have those environmental conditions locked in. Sorry, so I just thought something else to add there, mate.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Yeah, I see there was a couple of comments there from Ryan, but I guess you've sort of addressed that too, Russell.
Yeah, Ryan, if you want to take that offline, mate, we can continue the conversation and we can talk about this all day, mate. So look forward to it. It's cool.
Yeah, it's an ongoing topic at the moment, isn't it?
There's just one more you can probably quickly answer. What time frame do you think the ISO 15099 adoption may take place or will take place?
Stephen, your guess is as good as mine. Go.
Yeah, okay.
No, we're targeting 2025. That's with 2022. We're not. It's not achievable or realistic, but certainly by 2025 we hope to have something. We will look to get whatever we can on paper into NCC 2022, and we're constantly having that conversation. But without a standard to reference, it's really hard. So the bulk of the work is to build that standard and build it, and they will come.
Okay, we might move on from there, but if anyone's got any more questions, just type them into the Q&A and we'll try and get to them at the end of the session. So now, thank you very much, Suman, for that. We'd now like to introduce Poya to talk to us about product technical statements and technical support that you have available as members. You there, Poya?
Yes. Thanks, Gary. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Poya, Glass Technical Manager in AGWA, and thank you for paying attention to this part of the webinar. So, as you all know, in order to show evidence of suitability with performance requirements of the NCC for both volume, whether through a DTS solution or a performance solution, the evidence can be a code mark certificate, a certificate of accreditation, a report issued by an accredited testing laboratory that sets out the test in which fulfill specific requirements of the BCA, a report from a professional engineer, or PTS, product technical statement, which is another form of documentary evidence which is not quite common. But the current evidence of suitability is extremely vague at the moment. Therefore, Building Minister Form and Building Confidence Report Implementation Team, which is operating under the Australian Building Code, ABCB, agreed their position on the establishment of the compulsory product certification system. Next, please. So, because of our connection with the Building Code Board, we know that there are some expectation over the horizon, mainly because of all the things we have had around non-compliance building products, mainly after a La Cruz building fire in Melbourne and series of building failure in NSW. Therefore, a lot more focus on compliance is required, and the evidence that we are getting is that the product technical statements, PTS, is what is being required. What we are looking to do as an industry in consultation and partnering with all other building products industries is to define what the PTS is look like as a similarly structured document before it's been defined for us. So this is a proactive statement that AGWA is taking to make sure that we have defined a set of criteria to enable people to understand what compliance means for our product statement. And the positive thing is that by aligning with other associations, we are making it really easy to understand and to navigate for the people who are looking for compliance. The whole point of it is that the way that the PTS, product technical statements, looks and align with the other industries is to make sure that looking for compliance become easier. And we are doing it to get ahead of the curve and make sure that we are in line with other industries. So the government does not define what does compliance mean. So we define our own future. The template will be drafted, we put forward to each technical committee for review. So the opportunity is to look and see what it means for our industry. So this is a positive statement that AGWA is taking to gain control of our industry and make sure that we are in a driver's seat when it comes to dictate what the compliance look like. Next, please. In this section, I want to briefly talk you through the technical support that you guys get as a member and what service and resources are available through your membership with the association. Probably the most utilized and well-liked area of AGWA service is our technical support. Ross, Suman, Nayan, and myself are effectively the technical team, and we all available for any questions. So you guys all know that standard very well. You know how to read it, but sometimes not quite sure how the standard is applicable in a particular situation, particularly interpretation of a gray area in the standards or some maybe complicated jobs with some unknown parameters. You can rely on us for some advice, support, and how to interpret or address a complicated situation that you have not come across before. So feel free to reach to us via email or phone call. Next, please. Also, we got a quite good library of guide series that go through various topics in quite a lot of details. All the guides are written in plain English, very practical. We've tried to make the content simple and easy to use by everyday people, unlike some of the other standards like AS 1288 and 2047 that are really complicated and difficult to read and require a fair bit of interpretation there. Next, please. Next, please. In addition to our guide series, we also have a technical fact sheets. In this slide, you can see the selection of the one that we published in the last 12 months recently. Fact sheets about window flashing, condensation management, section J, flashing requirements in window, also wind loading for buildings, and IGU insulated glass unit compliance testing requirements, which was published recently. All these technical fact sheets have only one single topic and clarify what is required to comply with the standards and also the NCC. We got all over 50 technical fact sheets as a library of information that can be used for all the members. So if you haven't seen them, I do encourage to download them from our website And if you have seen them, review them, and have any question or feedback, please contact us for further discussion. Next, please. Another thing that I guess is well known through our industry is that AGWA provides a dispute resolution service. So if you got some issues like in a job, for example, you got some issues with your clients like the builder or consumer, and consequently you haven't get paid for whatever reason, you can contact us. We can assist you further. And there are a few ways we can assist you. Firstly, an advice report, which is the lowest level of our service. For example, if you got let's say, a care issue and you want to know what to do, how to solve the problem, we got 8 NATO accredited inspectors around the country that they can travel to site, review the documents, provide a written report, like an engineering report or a simple advice report for compliance. And secondly, an independent inspection, which is generally if the dispute has not been resolved through mediation or discussion, and we need to document the outcome, solve the issue, or prepare for legal activities afterwards. In this case, we can provide expert witness to support the independent inspection and provide expert testimony on your behalf. That's it for me, and thank you again for your attention. Gary, is there any question for me?
Thank you, Poya. I do have one very short one here. As members, can we get inspections done as a part of our membership fee?
Oh, yes. Actually, yeah, that's a valid question. So as a part of your membership, you are able to use this service if you have some issues with your clients. So the process is that firstly, we try to help you to solve the dispute. But if it moves through a stage of inspection on site, then there will be charge involved. As I mentioned, we are able to organize an inspection by our NATO accredited inspector all over the country. So you need to use our online dispute service, AGWA website, fill the relevant forms, and we are able to help you further to firstly hear all the voice and then try to rectify the issues on your behalf.
Thank you, Poya. That's all we've got at the moment, but at the end there may be some more, so thank you very much. We'd now like to welcome Melissa Baker, our Training and Health and Safety Manager. Hello, Melissa.
Hello, everybody.
Tell us about training.
Yeah, how are we all this afternoon? Just a very short update from me in terms of the training space and what's happening. The biggest change that we've seen, obviously with a lot of the restrictions and also answering a lot of the requests that we had from our regional members, is that our formerly known as our face-to-face courses are now being delivered via a web delivery facilitated format. Exactly the same in terms of there's a trainer that is stepping you through the process and answering questions the whole way through. Rather than our online courses, which are more of an on your own format where you work your way through at your own pace. So our intermediate fenestration and our advanced commercial fenestration has now been split into 5 sessions. It's generally run over 3 weeks, a 2 to 2.5 hour session each time, where you log on via the Zoom, and then our trainers, generally Gary or John, will help you through that process. We've also modified our 1288 and advanced 1288 to a single 2.5 to 3 hour session, again via web delivery. And our AFRC simulator training courses have also been changed and modified through to a web delivery. Those ones are run with very small groups due to the highly technical nature of the training course, but now can be delivered via 8, about 2 to 2.5 hour sessions again. So just a lot more accessible for our remote members, plus also, and our regional members, plus also more accessible for everybody at the moment due to all of the travel restrictions that we have. We also have our online staff induction. So this is our online self-paced, step-by-step, step you through. We have Windows induction that's been around for a little while and been a really important part of inducting a new employee into your organisation and into the industry. There'll be a glass induction program and a safety induction that are the new courses. Glass induction should be out by the end of the year, and the safety induction will be out early in the new year. So really focused based on member feedback that taking a new employee and stepping them through some of the glass sides of the business rather than the window and fabrication side with the existing course, as well as WHS and safety induction for new staff coming through. Then, of course, we've got our other industry-specific online courses that are available at any time. So if anyone has any questions about any of those training courses, please get in contact. I'm happy to help, or of course, check the website.
I do have one question for you here already, Mel.
Mm-hmm.
So because you're now delivering so much content in the web, does this mean I would be able to complete a fenestration diploma without any face-to-face training?
Yes, so the intermediate fenestration absolutely is now done via the web delivered facilitated sessions. So yes, the diploma can absolutely be completed now without any requirement of a face-to-face session or travel to a capital city for a face-to-face session.
Thank you, Mel. There's no more questions here at the moment. I'd now like to welcome Clinton Skeoch, our Executive Director and CEO, to take us to the end of the webinar. Thanks, Clinton.
Not a problem. Look, I'm got the opportunity to talk to you about our accredited company program. Before I do that, hopefully you found today a really interesting program. We've tried to sort of give you a broad breadth of the different areas that that we're working on, and expose you to the different members of the team that are here working on your behalf to add value to the industry. And they're there to take your calls, to answer those tricky questions, and to work through the different ways in which we can help you. So reach out. You've seen Gary post a lot of contact details, contact numbers. We're here to help you and help your company grow in these crazy times. If I can move to the accredited company program, many of you in the Windows space have been part of our accredited company program for a long time, and we've been working through how we enriching that program as part of the new merger. And we're really pleased to bring on board close to 300 new glazing companies to fill out that program, and we're working on bringing up and developing accreditation programs for the other sectors in our organisation to build out what will be probably the largest building product accreditation program in the Southern Hemisphere. You've heard Hoya talk about some of the accreditation or some of the ways that the industry and also government are looking at demonstrating compliance, and the accreditation program fits really quite neatly into that those compliance pathways to help demonstrate that your company is doing the right thing. If we look at the program, the big changes this year have been obviously we are rolling out a remote format and trialing that, as well as focusing on those that we can get to, and that will continue to roll out through this year. But we're also introduced 3 pillars. If we look at the next slide, the new pillars are obviously the compliance and the completion of the accreditation audit. You will get an accreditation for the compliance, which is what you've got previously. But we're also adding in a skills and training pillar and a safety pillar. These are really fundamental. The feedback we got from industry was that we are a dangerous industry, and so we're looking at trying to raise the profile of safety in our industry, but also raise the requirements. Unfortunately, we've had to work with a couple of members who have had accidents and have hurt their people, and we don't want that to occur. But in rolling out this program, what we're looking at is effectively working with you to make sure that you've got the minimum legal requirements in place. It's there to support you, and we've worked hard to develop the documents that if you haven't got them in place, that we can supply those to you to make sure that your business is protected. We ask nothing more than making sure that you've got those processes in place that you need to have by law, and we're here to make sure, essentially as managers or as owners of your business, that you're able to keep your business should something happen. And so look forward to working with you. There is no judgment. It's here to assist and coach and build up the capacity within the industry. Equally, the skills and training pillar looks at the requirements of our industry and making sure that people in your business understand the applicable standard. In the case of Windows 2047, we're looking to make sure that at least one person in your company has been trained in 2047 accreditation and understands what's required to make compliant windows and install compliant windows in your workplace. Not major changes. You'll see that I think it adds a lot to the weight of what we do. As I go around and talk to different politicians, often as one of those industries, particularly with glass being such a dangerous product, the safety aspects come up, and it's a really positive discussion to outline that we are bringing this safety nuance and safety focus into our association, and to try and help you as members on that journey. So I look forward to progressing that. If we look at the other items, just as we close out, I know we're going a little bit over time, but the next slide is the WERS database. We've outlined the white paper that we've been working on. We'll be announcing in the coming weeks some really key announcements from the final stages of signing a contract to revamp that database. I'm pleased to announce that our aim in doing that is to basically develop a platform that can lead us through the next 10 years plus of energy requirements in our industry. And we've had discussions with a lot of the key suppliers to the industry, and it's our hope that not only WERS will deliver what it has in the past, but bring in the capacity for enabling, in line with the standards that we're reviewing, at-size ratings. And we've had discussions with most of the software companies in the industry around accessing that database and being able to do reliable, accurate, transparent and fair at-size ratings through the normal software that you use in the marketplace. So we're working on the project to build that repository, to make it available to industry, to speed up the way NATAs and the various whole-of-house modelers use that information, make it more accessible, make the cycle times for updates a lot shorter in what they are, but also to provide that next generation of capabilities for our industry. The other thing I'm pleased to announce, you may not be aware, but we've launched a number of subcommittees this year. So far, we have a hardware subcommittee that's formed and is working through developing an ICP for that sector. We're also working through a shower screen working group. And watch this space over the rest of this year and early next year. We'll be looking to form a timber subcommittee to look at how we can review aspects of compliance and firm up some of the issues that affect that sector, and also UPVC subcommittee. We'll be working with industry stakeholders to bring discussion to those areas that often in the past haven't been able to be the core focus, and the board has really wanted to step up and make sure that we're representing all the sectors as best we can, and start the dialogue around how we can improve compliance, make the playing field as level as possible, and make sure that we broaden the pie so that our valued members, can fairly and appropriately compete. With that said, I can see as I was talking a whole lot of chats, I think, popping in. I'm not sure whether they're questions, but that closes out my presentation. Happy to take any questions if people have them.
Most of the chat was people just joining and saying, did this start early? Because we've got the old daylight savings confusion, and I think in the email we might have put out, it was ESDST or something, so a little bit confusing. So we apologise for that for those that have just joined us recently, but we've recorded the session, so we certainly will be sending out links. Now, we did have another question that I sent to all the panelists. It was about, where was it? Here we go. So in the last few months, so it's from Natalia, in the last few months they've seen energy efficiency reports sent to us which show very low U values that need to be achieved. So U values for some windows needed to be down as low as 1.4. What would be the reason for this low U value? I don't believe it could be achieved in timber windows.
No, and I would suggest that might be a centre of glass value. I'd probably just question whether that's a whole of window value or whether they're just picking up on the centre of glass. And also, there's a lot of ASD consultants out there who like the easy wins. They want to get paid. They want to select something that they're guaranteed to get them across the line and get a DA approved. So they're selecting some pretty weird things. Not everything they're saying that can be done actually can be done. So I'd suggest you go back to the SD consultant and talk with them, or even through your builder, probably more appropriate, around what is achievable and have it reassessed. Because that is a very low number, and it's surprisingly low. Of course, if it's a glass house and there's no walls or insulation, that might have something to do with it too. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's a few comments there in the chat, but certainly Russell and the team would be happy to talk to anyone about that. If anyone wants to actually ask a question and talk to us, just use the raise hand function and I'll take you off mute and you can ask the panel any questions. I've got one here, hang on a moment.
Trying to find Vince, I think.
I am trying to find Vince. And why can't I find him?
Yeah.
Sorry, Vince, I can't find you there, mate. I'm looking and having trouble. This should have worked, but this is the first time we've done this. But
there you go, Vince. I found you.
You found him. Good.
Hallelujah.
There you go, Vince.
Very good. I just got a question. As I suppose an association, and obviously the changes that have occurred around spandrels, and this is part of the NCC 2019, is the association looking to help people solve the spandrel conundrum around the fact that we've got a backstop of an R1, which is basically a U1 for spandrels? Is that something we're looking to try and develop a basic understanding of spandrels to help the industry?
It has been discussed at length. I mean, like all these issues, we have a couple of technical committees that talk about these sort of issues, as well as the team internally. We're constantly reviewing the status quo. I think the answer to that question is yes. The longer answer is how long's a piece of string? We're trying to untangle that. We do have a very stringent requirement imposed on us in 2019 that the industry is trying to come to terms with, and there's some gaps in the regulation that we need to address as well. But Vince, I'd probably suggest that it sounds like your question is a little more specific, and I'd be happy to take it offline with you and go through any specific design issues you want to talk about.
No worries.
Thanks, Vince. Any other questions that we might have?
So that looks like all we've got there question-wise. So just as we close off, I'd just like to sincerely thank Scott and Softtech for supporting and sponsoring the webinar today. We really appreciate it. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks very much, Softtech. I'm going to close off, Gary, by saying that, well, actually, Scott, feel free to have the last word, but thanks, everyone. I remind you to reach out to the technical team if you have any questions. Hopefully all the contact details are there and you found this useful. Scott, closing words to you, mate.
Fantastic. It's a great initiative that you've got here, and I'm sure that it'll improve. We'll work on the timing, I suppose, for the time. The eastern states, the western states, Queensland, where I am at, I have to rework my email as well. So, yeah.
Thanks very much, everyone, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.